Hello and welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses. As despite the cold weather coming into Scotland this week, -14 in places, evening jambos, the Dons continue their hot streak, Phil, as cup progression was on the cards this weekend, a routine 4-0 win over Spartans. We'll look back at the best of the action. Pretty straightforward game to review, I guess, and also take a look ahead as the Dons try to continue their winning run in the Scottish Premiership as well as they head to Dens Park this weekend. Phil, very comfortable weekend.
Yeah, it was. I think we kind of expected a win, but yeah, I was glad that we didn't make it too much of a chore, compared to some other teams at the same stage as us.
Yeah, no, it was nice to, Jimmy Thelin respected Spartans, respected the competition, went as full strength as possible. A couple of changes which saw Leighton Clarkson being one of the changes in coming into the starting lineup in place of Topi Keskinen. Good for Leighton to get some minutes under the belt. And it was a very professional performance of the weekend, and that professionalism then allowed us to ring the changes further into the game. We saw Nielsen coming off just past the hour mark for a well-earned rest, obviously having played games in Norway this season as well, and Gavin Malloy getting his first break from first team action as well, allowing Angus MacDonald a rare foray into action.
Yeah, definitely, and like you say, professionals, the exact way I would describe it, and I think that's really all that we really wanted from it. The score line was lovely to have a big score line and also be a bit more clinical and kill the game off early doors. But yeah, like you say, it was nice to be able to sort of see that squad rotate a little bit and have some players that were missing either last week or early in the season back. So yeah, it's looking good. Jimmy's getting his first taste of Hampden, getting a Celtic double header as well. So I think it's it'll be a good way to sort of benchmark this team, I suppose.
Yeah, we'll maybe discuss that a little bit. As you said, of course, the Dons getting Celtic in the League Cup semi-final. It's been announced this evening, we're recording this on Monday, that the game will kick off at 5:30 on Saturday the 2nd of November. A late kickoff is terrific for most fans, albeit maybe some will complain at that. Scottish football and kickoff times never keeps anybody happy. I think some of the complaints around the kickoff time is the fact that the last train back to Aberdeen might be affected by that. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm certainly happier than seeing it as 5:30 compared to 12:30.
Yeah, definitely. It's could have easily been like a 12:30 Sunday. So 5:30 on a Saturday, I think, better for the majority. But like you say, it's never going to work for everybody. That's just the nature of it, and you always have someone that'll complain about it. But no, personally, quite happy with that. And yeah, look, I laughed and joked on Twitter that Rangers and Celtic were going to be kept separate in the draw as per usual, but you've got to beat everybody to win the cup. If we didn't play them in the semi-final, could have been playing them in the final. So, get them out of the way now and then beat Motherwell in the final is my prediction.
Well, that'd be ideal, but it's always nice to keep the top two apart. Well, that's the myth, but they've been drawn together in the semi-final stage. So one definitely to look forward to, and I'm sure, as you kind of said, October will build up to that. Of course, that taking place in the first weekend in November. Let's look back at some of the action from that weekend's win. We'll look at the first half goals in particular. We'll maybe speak about some of the action that surrounded it, but Pape continuing his fine run of form, getting a goal, being in the right place at the right time, and Kevin Nisbet at the second time of asking, after fluffing his lines previous, getting his first goal in front of the Pittodrie faithful. Two goals that will do both the world of good, especially for Pape. Good 45-minute run out for him before putting his feet up for the second half to avoid a suspension ahead of the semi-final.
Yeah, and that was exactly it. Was a player I thought was probably going to be dropped from the start just with that risk of suspension, but with the form that he's been on, it's really hard, even a booking away from suspension and against League Two opposition to drop him. It's too difficult. And like you say, I think his goal as well it's the sign of a player that's on form and a player that is confident. Probably wouldn't have been in that spot sniffing out the goals if he was on a sort of bad run. So no, it was good for him to keep that going. And overall, thought he had a very solid first half, and like you say, was in a position where he could be rested at half time, which was good. And same with Nisbet. It was nice to see him get a goal in front of the red shed, albeit like you say, a bit of a tap in to make up for an earlier blared over the bar. So it was good to see him also getting a goal. And again, his all round game was impressive first half as well. And like you say, just a very professional performance. Nothing to really cause any worry or concern. So no, really pleased with how we sort of took the game and took it by the scruff of the neck.
And before we kind of speak more about the game, I guess we speak about professional performance, but a performance that impressed Dougie Samuel, the Spartans manager. Previous managers, opposition managers, I should say, have come to Pittodrie and spoken about the atmosphere and the change in feeling at Pittodrie this year. Yet another manager, unlike the media, is coming out with praise for the Dons, saying how well we played, how good we look, and for Dougie Samuel, probably had the best seat in the house, a first hand view of that, and didn't have to pay for it either.
Yeah, and I think that was a view that was shared across the board. I mean, I saw quite a lot of reaction on Twitter from Spartans fans sort of saying how impressive Aberdeen were, as much as they enjoyed their day out. I think they also enjoyed the sort of football they got to watch from their opponents, which I think is really quite a credit to Jimmy and what he's doing. So it was really, really solid. And I think as well, what really impressed me off the bat was, although it wasn't as full a stadium as we've seen in other games this season, I still thought the atmosphere was superb, especially from the red shed. Full voice the whole game. So no, it was really, really, really impressed, and that obviously helps the team continue how they're playing as well, knowing that we're all behind them, even in games which have a lower turnout than bigger league games.
Yeah, no, and probably the turnout was maybe disappointing for some, given it being a quarter final. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but as you say, the atmosphere came across very clearly on the TV, on Red TV, and it was good to see that continuing, despite, as you say, the lack of crowd. I think as well, what impressed me was the way we approached that first 45, especially. It was that continuation in what we've seen from high press, long diagonals, and looking to move the ball out wide, attack down the fullback, and there seemed to be a lot of drilling the ball across the face of goal, albeit sometimes Jack McKenzie was trying to cross it as hard as he could and not necessarily accurately. But we also, I felt in that first 45, we're trying our luck from distance a lot more than we've seen previously. I think I know the game that springs to mind was potentially the Kilmarnock game. We discussed about we were trying to be too fancy on the edge of the box, just trying to almost create the perfect goal. Whereas this weekend we tried our luck from distance, and ultimately that's where the first goal came from. Palaversa, I think it was his shot that was well saved, and Pape has the rebound into an open net.
Yeah, definitely. I don't even know if it was well saved. I thought it about knocked the centre half out from where I saw it in the south stand. He absolutely thundered it. But no, like you say, I don't think it was any sort of. I don't mean it by any sort of disrespect towards the Spartans keeper, but when you are playing lower league opposition, you need to be testing the keeper as much as possible, because it's just a law of averages that there's more than likely going to be a mistake there. So it was good to see that, and like I say, I think it was. To not fluff my language here, we didn't really take the piss, which was quite nice. I don't know if you watched any of the Celtic Falkirk game. I found at times, I think Celtic just got far too comfortable. I don't think we allowed ourselves to do that. We weren't trying anything too fancy. We weren't, treating it like a training exercise. We were going out there to get the goals, win the game comfortably, have no scares. And I think that's one of the main things. And one of the things I've really enjoyed about this entire League Cup run under Jimmy is we've never really, tried to make things too fancy to the point where it's almost a detriment. We've just gone out to win it. And I think that is the main thing, really.
Yeah, I guess it speaks of the approach and having that full focus and full respect for the competition, despite, again, with the greatest respect to everyone that we've played so far, the level of opposition, because we've not played anybody from the same division. so far, and we've got all the way to Hampden for the third consecutive year. So again, to be commended to the whole team for doing that. How much so did you expect in that first half to see a Palaversa pile driver, because he was the main person trying his luck from distance?
Oh, it just felt like it was coming. Like the entire game, it just felt like it was coming. For me, again, the standout on the pitch. I personally thought he was the standout against Motherwell. And the same again against Spartans. I just think he's a superb midfielder. Just everything about his game is so good. And again, he finished that 90 and looked like he almost didn't break a sweat. Just a really brilliant footballer. And I've seen a lot of sort of discourse about his comments that I think were maybe taken slightly out of context, perhaps by the newspapers compared to the full Red TV interview. But he's got the quality to use this club as a stepping stone to get back into the Premier League, because he's a blooming good midfielder. He could walk into a lot of teams, I think, when he's fully fit and got games under his belt. But yeah, and again, it's one thing I'd really like to pose to you. The sort of headache that this now poses for the midfield. Obviously, second half, we saw Shinnie getting back on after his missing out in the matchday squad last week. Clarkson back from injury now. Palaversa still to come back, and the undroppable Nielsen as well. Where does this put our midfield going forward?
Well, it's exactly, for those watching on YouTube, they can see that as one of the captions. Is there a place for Shinnie as the Dons head to Dundee? And that is the delightful headache that thankfully Jimmy Thelin got, not us. And it's definitely a question that will be discussed on supporters' buses going down the road to Dens Park and in pubs. I'm sure it was even discussed post-match after the weekend. Palaversa was absolutely different class, along with Leighton Clarkson, the two of them, the quality that both possess. I mean, we all felt lucky enough when Leighton Clarkson came here for the first time, let alone when we managed to re-sign him from Liverpool on a permanent deal. Ante Palaversa, I mean, how we've managed to secure his services, if we keep him a whole season, we are absolutely laughing. But the question now, when you've got your captain back fit, can you keep him on the bench? Will you keep him on the bench? I personally don't see how he comes back into this squad. And I don't want to see us building a squad around Graham Shinnie with the greatest respect to him. You've got to be playing the best players, the most quality players, and Nielsen and Palaversa right now provide that.
Yeah, I think it was a tough one. Like you say, me and my pal discussed it at length in the pub after the game. And it's one of those things where, for me, okay, again, we'll use the phrase, it's just Spartans, but for me, that was probably the most balanced I think we've looked in midfield. I think it had the perfect little bit of everything there. Again, it'd be interesting to see that midfield potentially at Dundee on Saturday, just to see how it runs out. But I think having Clarkson in the 10 and having Palaversa and Nielsen deep worked wonders. Again, I think the only slight criticism I've got is we've made that change in midfield again when Shinnie's came on. And I feel like we kind of lost it for about 5 minutes until everything sort of settled back in. And I think that's kind of where Shinnie's role, for me, looked really good, and where I could almost see it working quite well in games going forward, where he comes off the bench and he is that energy. He's still leading the press. He's thrown himself into challenges. But yeah, no, Palaversa and Nielsen for me, I thought worked really well sitting, and I think it helped as well, obviously, that Ruby turned into the best ball playing centre back in the world for 45 minutes. But yeah.
Yeah, what a cross for the third goal. But I think, again, on your point there about the substitutions, I know we mentioned that last week about becoming weaker. I don't necessarily feel that this weekend we became weaker, but for me, the subs, I just felt like it was a pre-season game. It knocked the momentum, but I also think Spartans rang the changes as well, because for them, they probably knew that they weren't scoring 3 to take the game to extra time, given the fact we scored so quickly into the second half. So I'm sure Dougie Samuel was giving some of the players that opportunity to play at Pataudry, rest some players with their League Two campaign in mind as well. I think Spartans deserve credit for the way they came up. They didn't sit behind the ball for 90 minutes. They did try. and look, they'll have won some fans. I'm sure Cameron Hobbs was very affectionate in the way he portrayed Spartans on the previous episode. But again, it's how us as a club dealt with that matter, and we did so, again, to use that word. And we're not getting paid for saying it on this episode. We were professional and we did it to the best of our ability. And I think what also has to be commended as well is the fact we kept a clean sheet. You spoke about Ruby in terms of the quality provided in the forward area. Dimitar Mitov hardly had anything to do. He had one high ball to collect, which nearly decapitated him when he landed back on the Pataudry turf. And then in stoppage time was alert to tip over a long-range shot out for a corner. So despite him not really having any action, he kept his full focus, and we can now focus on Hampden after dealing with the upcoming Premiership run.
Yeah, and again, I think it was good as well for Ruby and Malloy to get the experience of dealing with a team that is just punting long for the most part and hoping something will stick. So it was good to see they never really got caught out. And it was also good as well to see just how composed they were at the back and actually trying to be a bit progressive with their passing. So yeah, like you say, overall, just a very no-nonsense game, which was very much appreciated. But yeah, like you said, I do think the changes really did kind of not kill our momentum because we were 4-0 up, but it did just kind of take that little bit out of the game where it was just sort of like, okay, right, we're now just seeing it out, which is fine, which is totally fine. But yeah,
and that's all I was saying in the office today. It just felt like it killed the game in terms of having that pre-season feel, because you knew Spartans weren't going to do it. And it would have been the same had we been playing any team in that situation, 4-0 up with 15 to go. It was game over. Everyone knew what the prize was, and we were now resting players with that Dundee game in mind whilst they were chasing shadows, I'm sure, at Ibrox 3-0 down. Esther Sokler coming on, I would say he got his goal, but let's be honest, that is definitely an own goal, and he was so close to joining the Mile Story Club in unbelievable misses from a yard out at Pataudry.
Yeah, I genuinely still don't quite understand how it went in. From where I was in the south stand, he connected with it. The keeper saved it. I turned in absolute disarray, and then everybody leapt up behind me, and I was like, "Oh, brilliant! What have I missed now then?" Only to then look at it later on Twitter and go, "How the bloody hell is the keeper let that in?" But yeah, he's got his goal, which is hopefully, no matter how it comes, going to kickstart him a little bit. But yeah, it was a little bit scrappy, and yeah, a 51st appearance as much as the club didn't want to admit it on Twitter earlier by only crediting him with 50.
Yeah, no, and good for him getting that confidence boost, hopefully, and if called upon at the weekend, can take that forward. And obviously, we're taking that forward into Dens Park at the weekend. 4,000 Aberdeen fans travelling down the road, or up the road in your case, from Edinburgh. Once again, huge credit to the club, and yet again another huge backing, which I'm sure Jimmy's already spoken about how much the crowd helped and how good it was to see the crowd so excited during that game at the weekend, as you touched on. But how much can the crowd play this weekend as we head to Dundee?
Massively. Dundee's maybe not been in the most favourable of form, but at the same time, it's one of those games that poses the opportunity to be a little bit sticky. This time around under Jimmy, it's almost, I don't want to say I'm going to sound like I'm properly overly optimistic and riding this bandwagon to no extent. I know that recently we've been trying to keep ourselves very level-headed and try and be as almost double-edged as possible. But it almost feels like we're just not going to lose, and it's so weird. Everything just seems to be going so well, that it just feels like we're just going to go, and it's just going to be again another clinical performance, hopefully, from the Travelling Reds. But yeah, I think I'm looking forward to it. I think as well, the sort of selection process, I think, is also going to be interesting, because if there's one thing Jimmy's done, I feel like he's rotated in the right areas every week. The players that seem to be getting taken out of the team and maybe starting the game on the bench, it seems to work, which really shows that he puts a lot of thought not only into who's performing on the training ground, but he's looking at where our strengths have lied in similar games. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how we go on Saturday in terms of the lineup.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that point you make about the crowd and the hype and never losing, which feels like we're setting ourselves up for a fall. But it's getting to that stage where the hype train, you've got to jump on before you miss it, and you almost want to be attending every game because you don't want to miss this special thing that's occurring down at Pittodrie right now and on the road as well. I think even seeing the tickets for the Hearts game, they're selling exceptionally well. So that feel-good factor just continues week on week. Dundee haven't been in the best vein of form. You look back at their August, didn't keep a clean sheet, haven't kept a clean sheet in September, nor have they scored a goal yet in September. Back-to-back defeats, 2-0 up in Dingwall and then 3-0 at Ibrox at the weekend, which saw them exit the League Cup. And they've conceded 2+ goals in their last 4 games as well. Sorry to try and find anything positive for Dundee fans that might be tuning into this episode so far. But those sort of stats must be music to the ears of an Aberdeen fan that knows how much this team can attack at will. And also, as we discussed on the last episode, change it up to try and break down teams that are maybe providing a stuffy opposition.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, it's feels almost like we're never going to lose a single game of football for the rest of the time at this point. And I think it's just because it's been so long since we've seen something like this. Like you say, you've got to jump on this hype train whilst you can, because it's very rare that we get on it these days. But yeah, if we are anywhere near as free-flowing and creative going forward as we were against Spartans, with how Dundee's defence is lined up the past sort of 4 games, you could be looking at carnage, really. There's the players going forward creatively that could cause so much problems. And if the likes of Pape and Nisbet are on red hot form and are sticking anything away that comes into the box, then yeah, it could be a very fun day out. But Dundee's still got players that can pose problems on our end. So again, I think we're going to say it again. I think it's got to be another professional performance. I think that's what it's going to take. I think going forward for the Dons is just continuing to remain professional and not let the emotions get as high as maybe we are letting ours. But yeah, I think again it's night and day to the sort of positives that it feels to be following the Dons. Like you say, it's a breath of fresh air, really, and actually feeling excited to be going to Dens Park and not thinking, oh God, this has the hallmarks of being a disaster.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny hearing you speak because we're not quite at the optimism levels that Callum normally provides as he continues to find a list of excuses similar to Duke for not appearing on this podcast. Obviously, Duke's not coming on this podcast. I was referencing that to being in Aberdeen. But Chateau Windy replied to us on Twitter this week about kind of remaining grounded. Yes, the team hasn't really been tested to his full ability. This was the reply was kind of in reference to the games coming up in October after the weekend in Dundee, where we've got Hearts, Celtic, Dundee United, Rangers, and then Celtic again coming up in that semi-final, where we'll really be kind of tested to see where the squad is, get a gauge of, are we title contenders for those that are fully on the bandwagon, or are we really capable of winning a trophy with that semi-final on the horizon as well? But I guess there is a case of, as much as we're excited to go down to Dundee at the weekend, we're excited to see Jimmy Thelin Dons in action and the prospect of another win to keep pace with Celtic and extend that gap to the other teams around us. There is that sense that we do have to still be realistic as well, that October will be that big test, but a win this weekend puts us in an even better position going into that October month.
Yeah, look, I want to say that I'm being grounded, but I think the issue is
but as soon as we score at the weekend, I'm getting carried away.
Exactly. As soon as it's throughout the weekend, I'm getting league winners 24-25 tattooed. But no, I think even when I try and look at it in a sort of more, I guess, taking a step back and looking at it a bit more rationally, I still think that on our day we beat anyone, even if it is a Celtic. I think the style of football we play will cause teams issue. Yeah. And I think that's just a fact. I think the resilience that we have as a team now is unmatched. I think even going a goal down at Dens isn't going to cause too much panic stations, because this team looks like it's got the sort of unity and it's got that sort of team mentality where they will rally each other and come back from it. And I think that's aided by Jimmy on the touchline being such a perfect man manager. And again, unlike us, doesn't get too emotional. He leaves that to Amir. Amir does the knee slides and the fist bumps, and Jimmy just looks very suave in his little, knitted jumper and blazer.
Going around high-fiving everybody whenever we score.
Exactly. So, I think even try to look at it more rationally, I think, as much as October is going to be the tougher month, I genuinely don't think there's any game you'd be looking at and writing off as, okay, that's we're not going to get any points there. Previously you would look at Celtic at Parkhead and go, right, that's immediately you're coming away with nothing, basically. Yeah. But you're looking at it now and going, do you know what? We could probably go and give them quite a good game. If we come out with nothing on the back of that, fair enough. But you're actually going and you're thinking we could nick something or take the game completely to them and boss it.
And I just want to circle back to a point you made there about if we go behind, I still have the confidence that we would kind of come back. We haven't been behind in the Jimmy Thelin era as yet. Ross County, of course, had the ball in the net before being ruled out, had the opportunity before Big Dimi Mitov got his right hand to Ronan Hale's penalty. So we've almost not seen what this squad is capable of mentally when we go behind. Hopefully we don't see that this weekend, because it's good whilst it lasts, both for us and this podcast as well, before any negativity needs to creep in. But it would be interesting, I guess, to see how the team react. But I think what we've seen in Dingwall was an example of it, that instead of berating a goal being conceded, that the whole stand behind the goal got into a rendition of stand free, getting that support into the team before, thankfully, the goal was then disallowed. So I don't think there'd be kind of that negativity flowing down off the stands. It would be that encouragement, being that 12th man, being that support that the players have relied on and become accustomed to this season, if in worst case scenario we were to go behind at the weekend.
Yeah, and I think as well the Motherwell game really stuck out for me. Obviously a late goal to make it 2-1 would normally be very much panic stations, but as well, the season's gone by, you would look onto the pitch and you would see heads drop, you would see players stop looking for the ball, they wouldn't go. And the first thing you seen was Nicky Devlin getting the stand going, getting the team going, and then you had, Nielsen in the middle immediately asking for the ball to feet, playing it about, and it just seemed like it was totally unchanged. And I feel like we're just not letting anything really affect our game. Even like you say, Ross County relying on that really late goal, never let it affect our game. And I think that's what, to me, shows that I feel like, whenever it may come, ideally never, we just never go behind it ever again. But, when it inevitably does come, that we end up going 1-0 down to somebody, I just can't see it really affecting us mentally, in the style of play, anything. It just seems like this team is so behind what's going on that everything else doesn't almost seem to matter. Again, I'm probably going to be proved totally wrong when the heads are lost when we go 1-0 down to somebody, but
Parkhead.
Yeah, it just seems, yeah, can't wait. But yeah, no, it just seems like all that outside noise that would typically affect Aberdeen Football Club just seems to sort of not be quite getting in. And like I said, I think it'll be interesting to see if that does occur. But just now, again, maybe it is me looking through red tinted glasses. That I don't think it's going to.
Yeah, I look forward to coming back and finding that and clipping up when we concede a Parkhead and end up losing 4-0 like we're accustomed to. But even then, I don't feel that's going to happen under Jimmy Thelin. We do have this different mentality and approach to games. In terms of looking at Dundee, as I said, they've conceded sloppy goals this season. I'm sure Dens Park Choir and any other Dundee fans wouldn't mind me saying so. They've added Simon Murray to their front line. He'll pose an obvious threat in terms of his pace. They've also added Scott Fraser as a free agent during the week past, I should say, to their midfield. They've got Scott Tiffany, still got Lyle Cameron, lost Luke McCowan in the summer transfer window. But Tony Doherty has done what he did last season in being sensible, I feel, in his recruitment. With the greatest of respect, it's Dundee type signings. It's signings that, aren't above their pay grade and they aren't below it either. They're good quality players for that Dundee side, looking to build on that top six finish from last season. As I said, kind of a sticky start for them in recent weeks as well with the sloppy goals. I'm sure at home in front of a large travelling support and hopefully a large home support as well, Tony Doherty is going to be looking to bounce back from those back-to-back defeats.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, for him, he's probably G'ing his team up on the fact that, compared to last season, we're a relatively big scalp to try and take.
Yeah.
To go out and prove a point that, you can't really quite write us off. Look at us for beating undefeated Aberdeen. So, and I think that's the motivation that a lot of teams will be coming up against us with. So, no, like you say, I think Tony Doherty, there's the way that he likes to play football is the type of way that can make a game a bit sticky, a little bit niggly at points, but they've got the quality where they can sort of turn it on a little bit. Like you say, Lyle Cameron's really good going forward. Scott Tiffany's got bags of pace, and Simon Murray knows how to get a goal. So, to be fair, it could be quite a good advert for Scottish football potentially, depending how this game shows out. But yeah, hopefully as a 5-goal thriller, 5-0 Aberdeen, please.
Yeah. In terms of Aberdeen, then I guess the biggest headache for this weekend is that midfield and who you start. But I think we're both in agreement. You don't change this. Probably actually don't even change the starting lineup that started the game against Spartans.
Yeah, no, I was exactly. I would say I personally wouldn't make any changes to that team. I thought the midfield was the most balanced it had been. I thought the front line looked really, really good. And yet again, the back line just showing themselves to be very solid and consistent and forming a really good relationship across the five of them there. So yeah, personally, I would go unchanged into Dens Park. You'd maybe say Keskinen in, but again, who do you drop? Because McGrath and Gay have been superb, but having Keskinen coming off the bench potentially, with 20 minutes to go at tired legs, would be quite a good shout. So unchanged for me.
I was just going to ask you that. Is it harsh on Topi being dropped? Maybe not in terms of the Spartan games, as we said, good opportunity for Leighton to get minutes under his belt. But I after his performance against Spartans and just the quality I feel Leighton brings and the fluidity he brought to certainly our forward play at the weekend, I can't see him being dropped. And I think you're absolutely right. The opportunity to have Topi, Vinny, Shaden, Duke, if he makes the matchday squad or not, obviously didn't at the weekend. 4 guys, Peter Ambrose as well has got bags of pace to burn, and running at a tired defence is really not what I'm sure the Dundee defenders will be looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one because you don't want, an £800,000 signing sitting on the bench. I think, we've said it on previous podcasts, he's not been signed to sit on the bench. At the same time, we were both in agreement that he struggled a little bit against Motherwell to really get involved in the game to a notable degree. And I think the problem as well is, I don't want to say he's not versatile because he's a versatile player, but you can really only use him on the wing. You can't really slot him into the 10. You're not going to use him as a 9, most likely. And the 2 players that we've got on the wing just now are arguably 2 of the best players in Scotland at the moment in Gay and McGrath in terms of, goal contributions. So it is harsh on him, but it's impossible to drop Gay and McGrath at the moment.
It's harsh on him, but again, like Nielsen, you've got to remember he's already had a handful of games under his belt before he joined the club. So he's well into his season. So, maybe a small rest doesn't, go against him negatively. But on the flip side as well, works positively in we've got good competition for places. Leighton, Clarkson, Topi Keskinen fighting for a place. We're speaking about, do you drop Jamie McGrath? We've got Topi Keskinen, a Finnish international, to come in instead. Same if Pape was to be dropped. You've got that option. Vinny's done well. Shaden's done well. Certainly better than last season. So we're finally beginning to see a little bit of the depth and the strength that this squad has, and hopefully, if needed, can be utilised to the best of Aberdeen's potential. Um, just positive things for us as fans to discuss, or certainly positive things as content creators to discuss. I'm sure Jimmy Thelin sees it in a positive manner, but wishes there wasn't so many choices to have. But again, when you're winning games and players are playing well, you're going to have tough decisions to make.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, it comes back to almost feeling like we've got full quality and depth on the bench at all times.
Mm-hmm.
If the game, as much as both of us hope this isn't the case, but if the game is 0-0 going into the last 15 minutes and you're bringing on somebody like a Topi Keskinen, that's a player with the quality to change the game. You're not bringing a quality player off in McGrath and going, oh God, we're bringing on, Neil Warnock's Shaden Morris, where you're thinking nothing's going to happen here. But even bringing on Morris, you're going, okay, he's going to get to the byline and he's going to get a good ball across the box and somebody should be there to knock it in.
Mm-hmm.
So, having that coming off the bench in a tight game is a very, very good headache. Well, not even a headache, it's just a very, very good option to have for Jimmy on the back of his selection headache. And yeah, no, I think, like you say, I think it'll be tough. There'll be a lot of tough conversations had this season, I think, with players that maybe think that they should have a bigger role in terms of starting than what they currently do. But I think Jimmy will negotiate that very, very well as a manager.
And I think another thing, I saw the club put out a snip from Kevin Nisbet about the kind of togetherness within the squad. I think there was a picture went online, it was on somebody's Instagram. All the players were out at the Albine having lunch through the week. So there's real kind of togetherness in the squad. There's not cliques, there's not splits. It is that band of brothers, I guess, if you want to describe it as that. And that can only generate positivity. And, I'm sure they're there to pick up each other if one's having a low moment. You saw Angus McDonald's Instagram as well. I think it was this morning, how much he enjoyed getting a run out at the weekend. So obviously the League Cup provided that opportunity to give players that have been on the periphery minutes, and just that small involvement will continue to motivate them to now capture league minutes if they can. But that means those in possession of the starting jersey have to work hard and have to perform to be able to retain it. Again, only works well for Aberdeen going forward. And let's hope when we reconvene next week, we're speaking about 6 league wins out of 6 ahead of the Basket Case Club from Edinburgh coming to town.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, how often last season did we sort of say that players looked like they got a little bit complacent because there was nobody breathing down their neck to take a spot off them. So no, I think you're entirely right in what you say. And yeah, I think depending on how this weekend goes, I'll be very much looking forward to journeying up from near Tynecastle and hopefully enjoying some sweet Gorgie tears.
Yeah, well, let's save that for next week because, of course, we've got the 90 minutes at Dens Park to navigate first. If you have been watching here on YouTube, thank you very much for tuning in. Leave a like on the video. Comment your thoughts down below, what you think for the weekend's action. Would you be starting Ante Palaversa? Where's Graham Shinney's future lie in terms of a starting place within this Dons team as well? But the Dons have continued their fine run, and as an extension of that, Boldbro have allowed the offer to continue. So bldbro.com, Glen10 at the checkout for 10% off. If you're listening, thank you very much for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Remember to subscribe as well. Until next time.